Honorable faculty members and dear participants, it gives me immense joy to stand before you and deliver a talk on this very topic that you see in front of you, sentiment and text analysis. And I'm deeply touched by the fact that I've been invited in my alma mater. This is for the first time I'm kind of delivering a talk in a workshop as an invited speaker. So I'm quite excited. I don't know about you guys, how excited you are about this workshop, but I am quite excited to, ma'am, please. I don't know if the screen is in that focus state. It is visible or not, I'm not sure, but not to the market. It's just that I have used this particular product a little ahead of all of you, or maybe some of you. So it's nothing that, and we are all learning. So as I said, it's a game, so we are all learning. And for that matter, this field of AI and NLP or machine learning, it is itself evolving. It has not stopped. It is itself evolving. And these concepts are very old. They started way back in 1960 and 70, and people are still trying to understand that how does a particular process work. And so I would be learning today along with you many things. And since I have played this game earlier, so I know the rules, a little bit of the rule set of this game, and I have experimented a bit, so I know that how can I create a game out of a game. So today you will learn the introduction of some of the things, the so-called magic of AI. You will see that how does that work, and some building blocks. And so I hope at the end of this day, you do not consider me as a boring trainer. Let's see how does it go. But just like if you add a pinch of salt to any of your food or in any vegetable, it becomes a little tasty. The same is with AI. So if you introduce that flavor into any subject, it brings a new dimension to it. So we have to understand from that perspective. We don't have to go into the math. And so please do not consider that this AI, this machine learning and NLP, these fancy terms, these are for those who are working in big tech companies like Google and Microsoft, or big professors working in Stanford and MIT. No, it's not the case. It is for them. It is for them to do the fundamental research. But as I was saying, it is not only for those who are working in tech companies, big tech companies like Microsoft and Google. It is for all of us. Because we have to understand this machine learning or so-called AI from application standpoint, and not from the core mathematics or the core programming which goes behind the scene. We will see a bit, but not the every minute detail of everything. There are two reasons. One, because we are not here to learn the math. Number two, I also do not understand every part of the math of this machine learning. So we will cover the introductory part today. The famous mathematician and computer scientist, he said that a computer would deserve to be called intelligent if it could deceive a human into believing that it was human. So that's what people have been trying from so many years. And today we will also see that where the computers have reached, what is the power of AI or NLP or whatever text analysis that we would see today. So I was looking into the program. You might have gone through some of the lectures covering overview of AI and machine learning. And so if you are aware of, if you are able to draw and map the relationship between these particular technologies called AI, ML, it's excellent. But even if you are not very sure of how to bring a relationship between machine learning or NLP, just think it from a toolkit perspective viewpoint. So AI is a toolkit. Like we have a toolkit which has screwdriver, hammer, and other things, knife, and they have their own purpose. They serve their own purpose, and together they kind of fulfill an aim. So AI is a big toolkit which has got tools like machine learning or deep learning or natural language processing. That is what we would be covering today. You have an overview on machine learning tomorrow, I guess. So you will enjoy that. And so I'm not going to talk a lot about machine learning, but we will see everything today from natural language standpoint, from text processing or text analysis point of view. So this is probably one of the most demanding skills in the industry. So even if you do not like my lecture today, you should be satisfied of the fact that you are going to learn something which is hottest in the market. So if you want to go into this field and understand the applications, people are going to value you. My topic today is sentiment and text analysis, but we just cannot cover it till we understand some of the basics, because text analysis is based on natural language processing. Text analysis is just an application of how natural language processing can be leveraged. So I have a couple of definition here. As per Wikipedia, this so-called natural language processing is a subfield of AI. As I said in the toolkit, it is subfield of AI or computer science, concerned with the interaction between computers and natural language. In particular, how does a computer understand the free text, the natural language, what we speak, what we write? How does computer make sense out of it? This is what is about natural language processing or text analysis. And as I have written here, by natural language, we mean a language that is used for everyday communication by human, like Hindi, English, so particularly English. So it is the unstructured free text in which we communicate or whatever we write, that is considered as natural language. And so we are going to consider some of the techniques today and see some of the application. How does this thing work called NLP or text analysis, and what sense we can make out of it? So there are many programming languages also, like C, C#, Java, right? And so these programming languages, they have fixed syntax, they have fixed architecture, and so it's easy to pin down that how do we understand those languages. But it is not the case with natural language. The natural language has evolved over a period of time, so it is hard to pin down with explicit rules. Okay, so this fellow is going to speak in this manner. He will always speak 4 sentences. He will always speak 5 sentences. This is not the case with natural language. This is again the same thing. It is trying to tell you that it is NLP is in between somewhere. It utilizes the power of machine learning to talk about the applications that we will consider today, and it is a part of AI. So it is somewhere lying in between this NLP. And NLP is everywhere. I mean, consider any day-to-day application, and you might find natural language processing or text analysis. And the reason is that over a period of time, with the advent of internet and high computing infrastructure, there is a lot of data which is available on the internet, available in libraries. There is a lot of data which is exploitable. And so these things now make more sense when we have to consider them from application perspective. So where can we see the natural language? What are the sources? So when you do a web search, so I hope everybody has used Google search. So when you do a web search, what are you doing exactly? You type in a query. So that is text, that is natural language, English. Advertisements, email, tweets, blogs, journals, technical manuals, radiology report, customer service report, everything that you can see here or many other, it has natural language embedded. And so there is huge amount of data which is available in these forms, and there is ample opportunity to extract the information, because till the data is available, let's say in an email or in a blog or in an article, it is just in the form of the raw text. So till you process it, till you extract something out of it, it does not get converted into information. So the whole idea is to extract that piece of information from the raw data. And that is where NLP helps us, or text analysis helps us. And it is to tell here that back in 1997, IBM created a program called DeepMind. That was a computer program in which the computer program could beat the world chess champion Garry Kasparov. And so people considered it as one of the biggest achievements of AI, or one of the biggest achievements of computer. But in today's context, it is an easy problem. Beating chess player or a Go player, it is an easy problem. And the reason is that it is a finite game, and it is mathematically well defined. It has got certain rules, it has got certain moves that can be programmed, that can be trained, and the computer can learn over a period of time. So that is why it is an easy program. But in contrast to this, natural language that we speak or that we write, it is ambiguous, it is ill-defined, it has got no structure, especially the free text. And look at the kind of problems that is implicitly embedded into this natural language. The idea of synonymy, the idea of polysemy, the same word can have different meaning. We can use the same word in different contexts. So all that, even the humans miss many times, that what does this sentence mean? So it is really difficult to train these virtual agents about this natural language. So that is why I have mentioned here that what you are going to learn is a hard problem. This NLP is a hard problem as compared to the easy problems. And it is hard because of these reasons. Admit to the fact that NLP or AI or machine learning is part of your everyday life. It is part of your everyday usage of internet or mobile. Yeah, that's great. So, which means that you understand the fact that it is already in your life. You are already using AI and NLP. It's just that at the end of this workshop, you can formally call yourself to be a part of AI fraternity. But you have been using AI when you use internet, when you use your mobile, apps. These are some of the most promising applications of NLP, where NLP the use case of NLP, where we can combine NLP and machine learning. So, information retrieval. The most basic example is of Google search. And so we use that every day. You put in your query and you get the relevant results, the similar results. Whatever you search in form of keywords, you get the results. So that is, you are retrieving the information. So how is that happening? So Google is a very sophisticated player. It is a very sophisticated engine, the search engine. And there are many factors when we do a search. We get so many results in fraction of a second, and that too, millions of people hitting across the globe that Google server, and they are getting in the same time frame the similar results, or the results which they want to look for. And so what is happening? It is the natural language. You are typing your query, your simple English text, your keywords, and they are able to give you the results. So we will look one of the applications. We will construct a kind of a demo, or we will develop a utility today to understand how does these search engine work. How do they interpret natural language in its very basic sense? Don't claim somewhere that we have learned how does Google search engine work. That's not something which we will discuss thoroughly, because that is beyond the scope of the discussion. But the basic ingredient of a search engine is what we will look, and that falls under the category of information retrieval. Machine translation, that's so common, and look at this. That was the first NLP application in 1950. So there was this particular text. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. It was translated into Russian at that point in time, 1950, and then back to English, and we got this. The vodka is good, but the meat is rotten. So that shows the kind of flaw in the literal translation at that point in time. But now the machine translation, or NLP, it has progressed a lot. And that is why we are here to see that what progress has gone over a period of time and why we should learn it. This screenshot of the current Google Translate, the spirit is willing, and you get something in Russian. I don't know what does that mean exactly in literal sense, because I don't understand Russian. But then if you retranslate it, then it says the spirit desires, but the flesh is weak. So there is a progress that we can see. So that was the first application of NLP, and that was in 1950. So almost 60 years have gone. And so these concepts are not new. It's just that at that point in time, there was very less data. There was no internet. There was no computing power. So internet has come, data has come, and computing power has come. We have the right computing power to run through these big models and be able to create these enterprise applications that you see. So Google, search engine, machine translation, all this is an example of machine learning or NLP. So whenever I say machine learning or NLP, it is because NLP on its own would not be able to give you this kind of stuff. NLP just helps you to deal with the natural language itself. The moment you type something, the moment you put an article to the machine, it kind of helps you to understand, interpret the meaning, tell the computer how to understand those words, because the words, they construct the meaning of a sentence, and that's how we also learn. So that is the part of NLP. But the training part, the training of, if you have heard in the previous lectures, the training of the models maybe on the data itself, that is machine learning. So it is an explicit way of making the computers learn. It is not a, machine learning is not a regular programming. So if I have to move from this Bisleri bottle to that one, so I can have a fixed program. I can find the shortest path somehow, and that is a fixed program. But you cannot do that with, let's say, you all visit YouTube and you get recommendations on whatever you like, on whatever you view on YouTube. So you cannot have millions of programs running there for every individual. There has to be a generic program which is able to give you those recommendations. There are not millions of programmers sitting behind, okay, let Hans Mohan search World Cup 2019, let me show the results, and then somebody else searches something else, and they get the recommendation as per their taste. So there has to be a generic program. There cannot be a regular fixed instruction that if somebody asks something, provide this. So that is the difference between the regular programming and the machine learning way. And so this NLP always utilizes machine learning to whatever application we will see. That's why I use them together. Then we will see about sentiment analysis. It is one of the most promising and one of the most exciting applications of natural language coupled with machine learning. And then there is something called question answering. So that is to do with conversational agent or the dialogue system. So this trending word called chatbot, that is question answering system. So we will try to build in the second session a live chatbot. We will see how can we build a chatbot, or at least some of the basics of that. How does a chatbot work? So that is more or less, if you have to restrict NLP, then you have these basic applications. And then there are sub-applications which one can create out of it. So machine translation is something we will not discuss. We will discuss information retrieval, which is, as I told you, the basic ingredient of a search engine. How are we able to produce similar results as per the user query, as per whatever user says? How can we produce the results which are similar to the query? That is what is the basis of a search engine. And before we so this introduction was needed because you just cannot hit on sentiment analysis or text analysis if you do not at least hear about these terms. So that's why if you are already conversant, that is well and good. But if you are not, at least I have walked you through these terms. So just one slide on machine learning. You have to consider machine learning as a black box as of now. And it is not because you are part of a faculty of education which is not an engineering faculty, or you are part of some school, you are not engineer, and that is why you have to consider as a black box. These fields have grown to the level that even I work in a company called Accenture, and we not every time we write from scratch or define a machine learning model. That does not happen from scratch. There are off-the-shelf mechanisms available. So we also directly make use of it. And we also consider many times machine learning as a black box. So it's just that since we have our training from that perspective, so we can a little bit understand the math or the science behind it. But for this workshop, I guess, at least for my session, we will be considering machine learning as just a tool from that AI toolkit. But few things that data is the most important entity. Whether you have to consider NLP, whether you have to consider machine learning, anything, if you do not have data, somehow somebody comes in from that gate, from that door, and says that, okay, data has gone somewhere, it has gone to some other planet, then this workshop, this entire machine learning, this just does not make any sense. So it is the data. So what electricity was to people some 100 years back, data and AI is for today's age. It is the new oil. So machine learning works on data only. You provide the data, it learns on the data, it learns the, just understand that it learns the relationship. That data has got some features to it, some attributes to it, and the machine learning is trying, this black box is trying to learn that relationship. And there are two terms you would be learning, I think, a lot on this tomorrow. There are two lectures from Professor Sandeep Paul on overview of machine learning, so he would cover a lot. But there are two basic terms. One is supervised learning, the other is unsupervised. So largely we would be considering supervised learning, which means that you have got the data and you have got the right answers. So it is like when you teach a student, there is a teacher, there is a supervisor. So you show them the question, you show them the answer. There is data also, you show them the answer, and then you ask them on something which the student has not seen. And then he makes mistakes or he learns, and then that is an iterative mechanism. The same, in a way, stands true for machine learning. So you, in case of supervised learning, so you provide the correct labels, that is the right answers along with the data, so that the machine can learn. And then once you feel that machine has learned, it has reached a level of accuracy, then probably you can look for the predictions. So the idea of machine learning is that what is new that it is providing you? It is helping humans to predict something, to do the predictive analytics that probably is very time consuming, and humans cannot do that. So the last block, that prediction that you see, is the outcome of this NLP block and the machine learning block. So machine learning or the model block is your black box, and what it receives is the data. That is the input to any of the thing. So whether you consider machine translation, or if you have heard about image processing applications, whatever is the case, whether it is supervised or it is unsupervised. Unsupervised means that you do not have the correct answers. The model has to understand the data and study the pattern on its own. You don't have the labels or the answers, the right answers attached to the data itself. So two things: data, most important. Applications would receive data. You have to construct an application. You cannot work without data. There is machine learning thing which is going inside, which is going behind the scene. It is trying to learn the model. But it is working on the data. It is trying to learn the labels, the relationship, and then you have predictions in front of you. So like we just talked about YouTube thing. So there is a lot of data that is available with YouTube, and then it is able to predict or recommend you something, but it has learned on a huge amount of data, and that is why it is able to understand and give you the recommendations accordingly. Okay, So since we have to kind of understand about text analysis, that's my topic today, sentiment and text analysis. So the most basic application of text analysis, and we will run through the NLP pipeline, the standard pipeline, is about is through document similarity. And so let's see what is it. And document similarity is the kind of basis for the search engine thing. So as the name suggests, there are documents which you have trained, and you come up with a new document, and you want to find similar documents. So that is document similarity, nothing more than that. You put in a query and you get the relevant top similar results. So that is about document similarity. And why this is a use case of natural language processing? Because this has got text data in it. So whenever there is a textual data, then we will call it as a NLP use case. Whenever there is image whose processing is involved, then it is a computer vision use case. So we are not going to cover anything related to images. Anything or everything that we are going to consider today is to do with text, and that is why the NLP. So NLP use case deals with text-based data, and document similarity is the basic application. So there can be several use cases of document similarity. One is that we have been talking about the search engine, the basic idea of search engine. You just put in your query and you get the relevant results. The other is that in a lot of companies you will see automated CV to job description matching. So there are a lot of CVs that they have trained, and that CV has what? It has got English text in it. So if we want to find out the similar employees, or if you want to find out that bring me the CVs, bring me the resume where the skill is either machine learning or NLP. So you are trying to find out relevant results through your query. So people have automated this entire thing. There are thousands of CVs that human resource HR department has to receive every day. And so they it's difficult to manually go through every CV and then decide that, okay, these 5 CVs fall into one bucket, these 5 CVs fall into another bucket. This is to do with machine learning, this is to do with computer programming or whatever. So there also you may apply the document similarity to find the similar employees or to find the similar CVs. Similarly, for news articles, so let's say you have got 10,000 articles related to sports industry, but you have to find articles, or you have to retrieve the articles which are only related to the upcoming World Cup. So that is also finding the similar news articles. You are able to get the news articles, you are able to bucket them into categories. So the moment you do a Google News thing, you get the articles related to sports, to economics, to finance, or to technology, or to politics. That is possible only because of this kind of document similarity, or what we will see, the text classification. And see, comparison is something as humans we do every day. I mean, we compare food, we compare products, we compare clothes, and then we take some decision. So the same stands true for the digital data also. It's just that digital data is huge, so you cannot ask people to sit and analyze and manually go through that data and then make the decision. So you need to have these tools which can fetch you the kind of similar articles or similar things. Okay. So I understand there is already a lot of theory going on, and you will see some more theory before we see something live in action. But that is somehow needed. So document similarity can have many applications in different areas, but I have tried to come up with a industry ready use case, an actual problem in the industry that we kind of faced and we created a solution for. So we will stitch a story and then move forward and then look some of the building blocks of this so-called natural language processing, and then you will see how does document similarity actually work. So there is a lot of competition in the market these days, and so the only motto of each of the industries to stay relevant with the technology and to stay focused on innovation. And people have realized over a period of time that it is, you must have heard that word Kaizen. So it is through the continuous improvement we can bring the innovation. And the continuous improvement is through the involvement of the people of the company, the employees of the company. And so people realize that there is something called all-inclusive attitude, wherein involve the people, involve the employees of the company, and ask them to participate, ask them to submit their ideas, and then kind of take out the innovative minds out of it. So because there is nothing like you can go into the market and go to the shop store and buy something, okay, give me innovation. This would not happen. You cannot go to a shop and ask, okay, I need innovation for 2 days, give me that innovation. So that would not happen. And so people studied, it is given in the literature that continuous improvement is the key. You have to involve the people. And so idea generation is a perpetual brainstorming exercise that companies do. They ask their employees to submit ideas. Idea can be of any type. Idea related to food industry, idea related to healthcare or to finance or to do with the automation or this AI stuff. So then, if we get some good ideas and that idea stands good for the company itself, then it can bring some innovation out of it. So that is an activity which is conducted every year. So that is all is written in a formal language in this particular slide, and I have given you a nutshell. So let's say this company called X, it also conducted an exercise called idea generation. And so this is a big company, big in the sense that number of employees of the order of 2 to 3 lakhs. So you are asking your employees, and the presence is global. So you are asking your employees to submit the ideas. And so people started submitting the idea. Okay, so let's say you all are part of that company, and there is a timeline that in 1 month, everybody has to submit an idea. I mean, this is not something that if you do not, then you are fired. But generally, every account lead would want that their account submit maximum number of ideas and like that. And so people started submitting the idea. And this challenge was created in the company that the idea which is judged best would be given some, let's say, $5,000, $10,000. So that was a kind of motivation. But the whole, the whole story. It is to bring some great ideas from that collection of ideas, from that corpus of ideas. And why we are bringing this particular story? Because the ideas are written in natural language. That is the English text. So try to connect the blocks through this story. The ideas that the employees write, it is basically the free text. So this company called X company that asked people to submit idea, it has got so many employees into it. And so they conducted this exercise and some 5,000 ideas got submitted. And the people at the back end who were assigned as mentors to review the ideas, because human beings can understand the language very well. So to review the ideas and to reject the ideas, then to select the ideas, they kind of saw that people are putting duplicate ideas into the system. The employees, they are trying to be very smart. So they are putting duplicate ideas into a system. So somebody submitted one idea and there was nothing in the system. There was no AI into the system. There was this web portal. You have to submit the idea. So out of those 5,000 ideas, they realized that 1,000 ideas are duplicate. So it kind of wasted the time of the reviewer, and they were not able to properly differentiate and bring out the innovative ideas, the good ideas, because there was this redundancy which is into the system. And so they asked the managers of those employees that, okay, please keep a check that the duplicate ideas are not submitted. One just does not have to copy. Because employees, they are engaged in their own activities, so they do not have time. So they copy paste and put the ideas. That is accepted by the system, because the system has nothing called what we are going to study, what we are considering, document similarity. It has no AI involved in it. And so managers told their employees that, okay, so please stop this copy pasting, just submit your idea or do not. So again, next year this exercise was conducted and some 73,000 ideas got submitted into the system. Now look at this range. You cannot ask 5 people to review 73,000 ideas. And this time, and human beings are very smart. So my manager also asked me to submit the idea. So he said that you have to submit the idea, and that I had a lot of work that day. So, and that day turned out to be Friday itself. And Friday I usually travel to Agra, Diyalbagh. So I start little early. मेरे लिए एक बड़ी भारी असमंजस की स्थिति थी कि फ्राइडे को काम भी ख़त्म कर लूँ और आइडिया भी सबमिट कर लूँ. तो बहुत डबल प्रेशर हो रहा था मेरे लिए. So I tried to be a little smart, because I understand the language, I understand the context, so I rephrase that idea. So I somehow reworded that, I used synonyms, and I smartly rephrased the idea and submitted into the system. My manager does not have that much of time. He cannot look into every idea. We are a team of 100 people. So he came to me and said, Hans, you submitted idea? Yes, sir. No copy paste? No, nothing. Just show me the idea. Yeah, okay, great. Great going. You're doing a good job. How are you able to manage everything? Yes. That's how we work. So then this 73,000 ideas got into the system, and those 10, 15 mentors who were assigned to review the ideas, they just gone mad. Because, that's what I have written in this particular slide. There is huge amount of text data which is to be analyzed. And it is highly difficult, it is extremely difficult to manually sift through each of that idea. It's not the job of those 5-10 people. And this is a ever-growing database. So this year, this activity was conducted in our company, Accenture also, and Accenture global strength is 3.5, and almost 2 lakh idea got submitted, that too from different countries. And so when this plagiarism thing was there into the system, this duplicate plagiarism, then this smart rephrasing, they were not able to identify. They somehow categorized that these ideas, some 100 ideas are related to transport. And there was one original idea, and 99 of them, they were talking about the same thing. And more or less, the meaning is coming out to be same. Somebody is saying use AI, somebody is saying use machine learning, somebody is saying use cognitive thinking. So they are using different words, trying to use the text to fool the system. And so then this company came up with the approach of document similarity. So they said that we are not going to get fooled by the people. At least 2 of the targets. One, plagiarism check. The moment you submit a duplicate idea, we will not allow that to be entered. So we will see how does that happen. And that is the basis of similarity, document similarity. And the next is, the moment you submit a query or an idea, it tells me at the back end that these are the similar results. These are the similar ideas. Whether it is smartly phrased or rephrased, the machine learning is able to identify. And that's how this time the activity was very successful. People tried to submit, but they cannot, because there is a stop by the system itself that you just cannot submit the idea. So that was the motivation. That is the motivation with which we should understand the document similarity. And that is generally the range of these applications. You will not apply machine learning where you have 10, 15 kind of size of data sets, sub 15 rows into an Excel, and you say that, oh, we need to analyze the text. That a human can do very effectively. But then when this range grows from 10, 15 to hundreds of thousands or in lakhs, then machine learning has a role to play. Okay, this is just to again do a bit of recap that we are doing. When we say data, it is just the text data. It has got nothing to do with audio signals, image, no. And that is why NLP as the use case. Data is the most important thing. What we have with us, we have existing data set, which means that we have existing ideas. In more formal language in data science or machine learning, we call it a corpus, or we call it a data set. But you can use it, you can use anything. You can say that existing idea line items or idea items, or it is essentially just an Excel where you have 73 records. And it is I don't think that is that clear. Let me see. Okay, so if I don't know if you can't see it, then this particular Excel has 73,000 records. The actual ideas which are submitted by the employees. We are going to understand that how do we interpret this human language? How do we make sense out of it to retrieve the similar results? And but I'm telling you about the scale, and the machine learning model will learn it. So that is the task of that black box. You don't worry about that. So somebody has submitted this kind of idea, online voting system, and there is a major roadblock. We should do this online voting, something like that. So that's how people are submitting ideas. Somebody is submitting about blockchain technology and the other things that, so likewise, some 73,000 ideas have been submitted. They are into the system, they are getting trained, but how does computer learn actually? Also, you have an overview of NLP actually, which is tomorrow, which is the basis of sentiment analysis or anything text analysis. Any application you have to build that has its core concept in natural language processing, but that is tomorrow. So that's all right. You can learn a lot more tomorrow, but you will have to see this particular slide. That is a standard pipeline, be it a machine translation, be it sentiment analysis or a web search engine or whatever you build, a question answer thing. This NLP processing or text processing, pre-processing kind of a thing is a standard pipeline that is applicable everywhere. And it does many operations, so we cannot consider every operation. I've already told you human language is not that easy to understand. So there are many operations that have NLP operations that have evolved over a period of time, which means that computer techniques. But then these are some of the most basic: tokenization, noise removal, something called normalization, and feature extraction. So you have got this. So I will just consider one example, like one idea. We cannot consider 73,000 ideas in one go to understand what is going behind the scene. But just look this one idea which has got, so there are 4 columns. So every employee is asked to submit the idea title, which is the first column, then what is the current situation, what is the problem, then the solution and the benefit, something like that. That is the format in which the employee was supposed to submit the idea. So, when we have to, as humans also, when we have to interpret the meaning from a sentence, or to understand what does that sentence actually mean, we somehow implicitly remove lot many things when we see a particular text. So for example, if you are reading this text of online voting, you have already made sense out of it. So the first step is the noise removal. So which means that we are trying to remove unnecessary things which would not contribute in extracting the information out of this particular text. So, and that is the first step of the noise removal. And so these are like removing the punctuation marks. So essentially the words would convey you the meaning. So the words are the features. They constitute the meaning. They will help you to understand the situation of this idea. Largely, these are the words. So we would also be, while training the computer, or maybe while training helping the computer understand the human language, we would help them understand through the words. So this is the first step of noise removal, where we are saying that just remove the punctuation marks, remove the digits. They are not going to make sense out of it. I mean, in the large picture. So that is what you have got after you have removed the noise at the first stage. So it has got no punctuation marks, no digits or anything attached to it. And then we do a basic step called tokenization, which is the idea of breaking the sentence into single tokens or words or features. they can be interchangeably used. Machine learning people would use features. Why features? Because words are the feature in case of NLP. They are going to give you the information. So for example, in image, pixels are the features. They are going to give you the information. So in case of NLP or in text data, the words are the features. So the first step that we do is to break the entire sentence into small token, like you see here. A swimmer likes swimming, does he swim? So we have broken down into single words. And that is we do for like all the 73,000 ideas. I'm just taking one single row in that Excel. This is also something interesting, and you should know this particular terminology, stop words. So stop words are the most common words in English language as we speak, as we write, and they are so common that they do not add any information. We just cannot use every word. We have to ultimately build a dictionary into our computer system to help them understand. So stop words in specific, they do not add any information. So for example, you can see a and the articles and connectors and other preposition. So we just remove this, and that is why this particular first step is known as noise removal in the text processing. We are removing the punctuation marks, the digits, the numbers, and then we are pruning these stop words. And this is a kind of a list. You can extend this list on your own. You can create a custom list, but that is a standard list wherein we say that these are the stop words to be removed. And then there are other normalization procedures which is to be applied. So for example, this stemming and lemmatization, you might be aware of them from the literature or linguistic perspective. It is something similar to this. So the idea is that we can express a word in various forms depending upon the context. So the play word or the multiply word, we can say multiplied, multiplying. And so there are different forms of the word which actually bring a kind of same information. So we try to bring them to the root form in order to reduce the number of words that we are going to train. You have to ultimately understand that you are building a dictionary. Like your brain is trained to understand a particular sentence because you have learned over a period of time different words. The brain has a dictionary to it, dictionary of words. So I give you a particular sentence, a 4-year-old boy or girl cannot understand because he or she does not have that dictionary progressed enough. So similarly, the computer will have to build up a dictionary of words, and we cannot feed all the words immediately to make sense out of it. So what we do is that we do these some steps. How does that happen is not a major issue. What happens is this: there is noise removal, there is normalization. So for example, this multiply thing, whether it is multiplying or multiplied, depending upon whether it is used as a verb or a noun, the computer program behind the scene tries to bring it to a form like multiply, or keep the actual form multiplying. So that's how you are reducing it to the root form, and that's important. And these steps are like, they are so elementary. They are in every, you go to any industry, you ask anybody that I want to do something in NLP. So they will say, okay, so do you understand what is tokenization? Do you understand what is stop word? So that's why these jargons. And so where we have come down from raw text of online voting thing idea to the tokens level. So we have removed the noise, we have removed the unnecessary words, and we have these tokens, single unigram, single tokens. But what you see is that we have something like voting appearing number of times, 1, 2, and you will see voting appearing here also. So there are number of times a word is getting repeated. So these are all the words after removing the stop word which we have constructed, the tokens. And so this activity has to be repeated for all those 73,000 ideas. These are the tokens only for that one single idea. And then we talk about this particular thing of building a dictionary. Like I said, that humans have their own dictionary, they understand the words. So similarly, the tokens that we have extracted, we are going to build a dictionary out of it, and we are going to feed those tokens into that dictionary. But the key here is to understand that these machine learning algorithms or the computer system, it just cannot understand most of the times it cannot understand the raw text. So if you say online voting, it has got no meaning for computer system. So we have to create a way out for the system to understand, for that machine or for that algorithm to understand. So the first thing is that we kind of, when we create a dictionary, it's not actually an English dictionary, but it's a mapping. There is a unique mapping between the word or the token, which you have just seen, and ID. So every token is assigned an integer. So like this. So this is some idea related to agriculture. So let's say out of 73,000 ideas, all these ideas, they are of 4 or 5 lines. So each idea might have 100 words to it. So total we might have millions of words. So we cannot take care of all the words. That is why we started removing those which do not make sense. Because that particular article called "the" would appear some 100,000 times into my idea set. And that the article is not making any sense. So in the dictionary, we have assigned a particular integer to all those tokens. And so that's how it looks. So now when computer has to recognize, it does not recognize by saying agriculture or anywhere. It says that when you pass on 2, it understands that we are talking about this word, agriculture. Or when you pass on 5, it understands that we are talking about aquaculture. And that's how the mapping happens inside the system. And as I said, that is what is written here, that a sequence of symbols cannot be fed directly. They do not make any sense. The natural language cannot be fed directly to the algorithms. It would not make much sense to the system. So that is why we have constructed this entire story of bringing the ideas to the tokens, assigning integer to the token. So we have numbers associated with it. And then the last phase of this entire pipeline is this feature extraction, wherein you have to represent every idea as some numeric presentation. If you do not understand what is that vector thing, forget about that. We call it vector model, but leave it aside. Just understand that we have to represent that as in a numeric form. And how and why? So 73,000 ideas I cannot help you to understand, but let's say there are 3 very small ideas. So the simple text, not ideas. Call you tonight, call me a cab, please call me, like this. Just 3 plain ideas. So what we have, we know that our first step is to bring the tokens, remove the words, and construct a vocabulary or a dictionary. And so when we look at the vocabulary, we have these some 6 words: cab, call, me, please, tonight, you, because they are part of our idea set or the corpus. We have removed a article because that was a stop word. So that is not part of my vocabulary. So I have a very small vocabulary of just 6 words. And so the next very thing is to understand that we will compute something called, behind the scene, it constructs something called this document term matrix. This is nothing, it's just that, see, the words are your features, so you make a table or a matrix. Rows are your documents. So likewise, you have 3 rows here because you have 3 documents. Documents mean, in machine learning, everything is a document, which means a unit thing, any idea or a text. So you have 3 line items, this 1, 2, 3. That is why you have 0, 1, 2. And then you have features, which are your columns. So when you construct this kind of matrix, you are training the vocabulary to the system. Or what are you training? You are saying that, help me to understand how many number of times this particular token appears in a particular row or in a particular text line item. So for example, it is saying that 1 means it is appearing 1 time, 0 means it does not appear. So, that is in a very basic stage, brain is also trying to understand what are those words which are not there. And if in a sentence you have so many words in your head, but you do not bring out every word when you have to extract meaning out of a sentence. So that is what we are also, like machines are also trying to understand, that help me learn what are the words, what is the frequency of each token in a row. So in the first row, it says that tonight you call. They have got value 1 because they appear once in that particular sentence. Others have been given 0 because they do not appear. That's how we are constructing and telling the system that this is the frequency. It has to understand that how many number of times this word is appearing. And then finally it understands, okay, so that is why this is an important word maybe for me. I have to consider things when I have to retrieve the results, when I have to give away the results, I have to consider these things behind the scene. So the last line item, which is 2, please call me, please. It has got 2 in that please thing, please column. So please is your feature, and it says that it has been repeated 2 times. So that is the frequency. So in a way, you might come across these jargons or these technical terms like vectorization. So vectorization, you don't have to get scared out of it. Vectorization is nothing, it's just this thing. It is a general process of turning your documents into this something called learning the frequency. So now we have come down from that raw text, which was written by a user, to the tokens after removing the noise and stop words, to a dictionary which has learned so many words it has got in teacher, to this frequency mapping. So behind the scene, the system understands that this word is appearing so many number of times, this word is appearing this many number of times, this is highly frequent, this is less frequent, this has got that much of relevance. And then there is no end to it. Then people came up with more sophisticated techniques, and they said that why only consider that how many number of times a token of word is appearing in that particular sentence. Why not check that how many number of times does that token appears in all the documents? So they started collecting frequency, 1 across that particular idea and 2 across the entire corpus. So just to make sure that we are doing these 2 things, there's some weightage thing which is going inside, and it says that if a word is extremely frequent, then give it a less weightage as compared to a word which is uh, less frequent, which might be unique to us because it does not appear in so many documents, it does not appear very frequently, so increase that weightage. So that balance is something machine learning model is learning. So that weightage matrix is the basis of, I mean, that entire learning stops kind of here in our story. So we have reached to a level where now there is no unique text like this. So we have broken down this paper, this text into tokens and to this frequency, and then map the frequency to somehow create this vector representation, to weightage representation, saying that, okay, this word is appearing many number of times, reduce the weightage. This is less frequent, unique, increase the weightage. I could have shown you this one slide. That is the nutshell of the entire thing we discussed. So you have something as input, you have done this pre-processing thing, you have done all this, and then model training has happened, and these vectors are there. You can call them as similarity index. These vector things are there, or maybe the numeric representation is there with you. And so the last thing of document similarity is that what happens now, till now we have been training the system. We have been creating the vocabulary. We were trying to kind of see that what would have happened, how a machine would have learned about these words, or maybe the frequency, and making sense out of it. And the same thing happens for now when you have to search for the similar results. So that is your test query, that is your query. So it has to undergo the same thing because it is also a natural text. So it follows the same procedure. And now that all these 73,000 vectors that you have created, I mean that numeric representation, you take one query, just one your query, and you hit against all those 73,000, and it returns a score. It says, and that is what is known as the similarity score. It returns a score that this query is, let's say it returns something called 0.5, which would mean that we will see that 0.5, which would mean that I am 50% similar to this idea, 70% similar to this idea, and then this is the relevance score. And then we kind of sorted, and that's what you see in front of you when you just type in that query in Google. So you get the top relevant results. This is kind of not a tool, but this is a somehow crude way to show you that all this is a IDE, an integrated development environment, where programming can be done. And whatever we have talked about, feature thing, that frequency, that tokenization, all that I have already done in this particular environment. That is all I have done, and I have created for you the dictionary. The model has been trained. And so Black one was the actual idea submitted by the user, drug identification tool. And it says something that there is no tool in which we can identify what is this drug about. So there's something that this idea is saying. And so what we have done to test this particular model, as we have been discussing, the problem of rephrasing, the problem of checking the system for similar results, we have kind of rephrased this. So we have made it medicine identification tool. We have changed this particular language. Currently there is no tool, something like that. So it conveys the same meaning, but we have changed the words, we have changed the ordering and all of that to fool the system. And so that's what we shall see. So So the rephrased query, let's say this is our utility or this is our system. So I have submitted that rephrased query to show you what kind of results do we get. We are expecting that it should actually give me that actual result, that result which is the original idea, that drug identification tool. But we have kind of rephrased to fool the system. And so as I run through the utility for that particular query, I see that I've got top 5 results. And the very first result is that drug identification tool only. That was my idea, which was there in the system. And all those ideas which was somehow related to, not actually the same, but somehow related to the medicine or drug identification, and you kind of get this score. This is behind the screen. What you see is a very fancy UI, so you don't see the scores and all, you directly get the results. But that is what is happening. The actual result actually was 97% similar. So we tried to rephrase and submitted. It provided me some similar results and with the relevant score. So similarly, let's say that online voting thing. That's the last thing before we close this session. So there was that idea about online voting. So as you submit that idea into the system, let's say I try to fool the system and I copy paste and try to submit the same idea, but it is already in the system. So it kind of give me this. The very first idea is already online voting. That is there in this system. So it tells the user that, or it tells the developer, the AI person, that this has got a score of 100%. This is a direct plagiarism check. This is a direct copy paste. And then you see that there is one more idea where everything is same except the idea title, which is somebody has just kept as e-voting. The rest of the things are same. So it is again saying that it is 100% same. And then we have more ideas which are somehow similar. There is one idea called online voting, which is at the third, and it has got 98% as the score. Then somebody talking about e-vote in elections in India, and that has got 97%. So that is how this entire story kind of now gets unfolded, that this is what is happening in document similarity. You are getting the similar scores, similar results on the basis of these scores. And how did you get that, all that NLP thing, all that little bit of technical thing we kind of discussed. So that's the end of document similarity session, first session. Thank you.